Hi guys, Sky News had Lucy Fraser on recently to defend the idea that the BBC is biased, and she wasn't able to come up with an example. She tried to suggest that perception was evidence, the idea that if people think the BBC is biased against the Tories, well then that should be good enough for everyone. Lucy could be dismissed as one of those MPs and ministers who isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but Hugh Merriman can't. He's supposed to be one of the clever Conservatives, a moderate, not a headbanger. But when he was challenged by Kay Burley, he demonstrated a complete lack of understanding of what satire is. Have a listen to this.
Is the BBC biased?
Well, I used to chair the all-party parliamentary group for the BBC, so I've always been a friend of the BBC. But let me give you an example. I know that you were searching for them yesterday. I was listening to the news quiz, which is on Radio 4 at 6:30 on Friday. I was driving from my constituency office to the home. For 10 minutes, all I heard, and it's satirical, it was just diatribe against Conservatives, not the government. And I did listen to that and think, for goodness sake, where is the balance in that? So, yes, I'm afraid to say, despite the fact that I've always been a big supporter of the BBC, that struck me as completely biased.
OK, you understand that a news quiz is comedy and nothing to do with actual news?
There was nothing in that 10 minutes that was remotely...
But you do understand that it's not
Of course, look, I would be the first one. I love it when politicians
like
get lampooned, but that was the whole point. There wasn't actually anything in it, in that particular regard, which struck me as being sort of amusing. It was actually just...
OK, so you don't understand what satire is. You don't understand that it was not news, it was comedy. And you're claiming that it's biased because you didn't find it funny. Okay.
It may not be in the news quiz, but it's 6:30 on a Friday, and as I say, it didn't strike me as being particularly satirical. It was just people standing up.
So you do think they're biased?
Well, that was just... Look, listen to the first 10 minutes. I challenge any of your audience.
Do you think BBC News is biased?
It was totally biased, and it was just completely...
Do you think BBC News is biased?
I think there are times when the BBC could do better, and when I chaired the all-party parliamentary group, then I felt that the BBC could do better.
Give me examples.
I think some of its content when it comes to social affairs, and I felt this when I used to work for the Department of Work and Pensions, didn't necessarily give two sides of the story.
Give me examples.
I have found examples in there. So that was again, I don't want to be personal.
Now, I know you've had 24 hours to think about it, so you must have got specific examples of when BBC News has been biased. Give me one.
So when I worked at the Department for Work and Pensions and I was working on universal credit, there was an individual there who would report on it, Neil Buchanan, who I always felt gave one side of the story and not the other side, which was the government side that I was working really hard on because I believed in universal credit. So that would be my working example when I worked there.
OK, so his examples are a guy who worked at the DWP, or when he was at the DWP, and a radio show. That's his examples of bias, and one is which is satirical. Of course they're satirical against the Tories because the Tories are in power at the moment. Of course when Labour take over, they'll be satirical against Labour, or towards Labour. Does he not understand what satire? This is... He's had, as Kay Burley has pointed out, 24 hours to come up with examples of how the BBC is biased against the Tories. I can come up with examples of how it's biased towards the Tories. Like, for example, you've had the situation where Laura Kuenssberg was asking Boris Johnson, and when he was in charge, very softball questions, not challenging him. We've seen examples with Brexit where the issue of Brexit was excluded from reports. People being interviewed, business owners being interviewed, asked, why is your business struggling at the moment? As soon as they bring up Brexit, it was edited out. So we can see examples of that. We can see how there's a difference between how issues like Brexit are dealt with by the BBC in London compared to regional offices. But when it comes to satire, of course satire is going to be focused on the incumbent. Who is the incumbent at the moment? The Conservative government. So of course they're going to attack them. What's the point in attacking the Labour Party? They're not in power. Satire is about lampooning the government of the day, the politicians of the day, the ones who are in power. Hugh Merriman either doesn't understand that or he's pretending not to. But once again, his examples are a radio show, an example of a radio show on one day, and some other guy. Okay, that's the best we can come up with. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.